3, 2, Kim. Hey, Lauren. We caught you drinking coffee. What does that coffee cup say?
It says designated sink cup. Available
That's where they go. Because you don't have to you can just put your coffee cup in the sink and then rinse it out in the morning and use it again.
But that's the thing, though, is are you going to irrevocably piss someone off by leaving it in that sink? And that's why you have to designate it like they know.
Are you the leaver of the dishes in the cup in the sink person, or the one who gets irritated?
So my rule is, as long as one side of the sink is free, you just need a workspace.
Yeah.
And then the other side, and then the other rule too is if the one side of the sink where the dishes are collecting starts to lean a little, that's when you know it's time.
That's a good barometer. Yeah.
That's basically like my scale.
So typically this is a very unique way to start the show, because we just, you had the coffee cup and then we just talked about the coffee cup. I didn't say hello and do my normal spiel of what episode this is.
Trying to put my sink cup merch out there.
Yeah. So to all the few people that are tuning in and out, more people used to watch. Lauren, I discussed with you the whole social media platform thing, suspension that I underwent. So we won't have probably as many.
Was that?
Do what?
How recently was that?
2 months, and I had to make all new. I had to make all new Facebook with a new email. I didn't make a new Instagram because that was linked to the Facebook, so they automatically took down the Instagram.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was looking from like 6 months ago, and I was like noticing it was pretty regular comments coming in. But you've said that it's been kind of a struggle.
Yeah, well, now we got to rebuild the platform that I built for a few years. And, if anything, that's why the cool thing about this on YouTube, it is broadcasting live, but we can just share the YouTube video and download it and clip it out and do whatever you want to do. But
yeah, I will say, though, I think that's such a big fear that a lot of creators that say anything even remotely similar to the stuff that we talk about, I think that's a big fear that they have. And I think that almost every creator that I watch that I like has mentioned somewhere in some video, like, oh, and if I get taken down, this is my plan.
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought that I would have been taken down for the subject matter, because obviously with the way things are and the censorship and the things we talk about, sort of challenging the status quo and challenging government and challenging the court system and whatever, that one, I thought I'd be taken down sooner, and two, I figured it would have been by the social media platforms themselves, not someone making a false claim of child pornography. I'm sitting here doing a podcast about shared parenting and not traumatizing our children, and someone reported me
out that whole word too.
Yeah, and then
anything.
Facebook never shared with me the example of this child pornography that was on my social media. Like, they never was like, this is the photo. I was like, all right, well, cool. I don't know.
Yeah.
And no cops, no one came to get me or arrest me. So apparently it wasn't legit.
Yeah, any kid nipples are illegal. Nipples are fine.
Can you say nipples? I don't even know.
But because kid nipples are like unidentifiable as female kid nipples, they have to just play it safe and say no kid nipples on the internet. But once you become a man, your nipples are fine.
But I see what that, and that's weird because I'm 39, and like if I was to have raised my shirt, this is, I have kid nipples still. I'm not fuzzy. I got young looking nipples.
So would your content be taken down?
Maybe
as inappropriate.
I don't know.
They would be like, oh, Chris has kid nipples. Take it down. Take it down.
At some point, all, to the audience. We'll discuss something that's, got some substance. But for now, we're talking about coffee cups and nipples.
Yeah, we got to jump off that train real quick.
So why don't we dive into a little bit about a serious discussion?
Yes.
Hopefully some of that the beginning pre-conversation kept people excited to hear about what we have to talk about. So Lauren, you like to go by Lauren because that's your name, but you don't like to share the rest of your name like I do.
Correct.
But that's probably smart for you because you're a girl.
Yeah, a lot of reasons. I actually do a lot to protect not only myself but like everyone involved, right? So a really cool feature that I would recommend to anyone really on any social media platform is generally you have the ability in settings to put certain words that are not allowed to be said in your comments. Like if someone tries to say them, it's getting shut down.
Oh,
so
cool.
like my last name and the last names of like, my stepson and anyone affiliated with me, you're not going to get through.
Can you say nipples?
Yeah, you can.
On yours? All right.
Far, that's good. Yeah, don't worry. I'm not going to take away everything.
So Lauren, you also go by, which is the weirdest thing, because I think it was 2 years ago, before I started doing this podcast, I did a social media page called Victims of Family Law, which I'm a libertarian. So it was a libertarian based focus on, it was sort of political, focusing on shared parenting. And then I did a page called The Dadvocate.
Wow.
And yeah, so a few people have done it. I was on a podcast that someone called me the Dadvocate. So I tried to push it for a little while. And then I was like, no, I'm just going to be Chris Cole and we're going to do We the Parents podcast. And the Dadvocate is sort of a cooler, nickname for a lady, I think. For a lady advocate for fathers.
It's like the Dalai Lama. Like,
yeah.
I transformed the spirit from you.
But I feel like a dadvocate should be a mother, not a dad.
It's what's really interesting about you saying that. And I was writing out a script. I thought about making a whole TikTok response to this actually. But I saw, I was like tagged in some dialogue. Sometimes I check that stuff. And I was reading this dialogue and this woman had said something along the lines of like, I've seen content creators like the Dadvocate, and I just really think that men's issues should only be discussed by men. And I'm like,
that's ignorant.
I was like,
that's ignorant.
I'm like, I don't know if you've noticed, but like, and no offense, I just don't think that men advocating for themselves is going very well.
It's not, and it doesn't mean we shouldn't, but once women join the advocacy and the fight, then they have to then you can't turn away from it. Then you can't sort of put us in a bubble of, oh, those guys just don't. And you did a video on it, and we would talk about that one too. Men just don't want to pay child support. That's why they want custody of their kids. What? Not saying that there's not dudes out there, and let's talk about the fact that you can reverse that and say mothers won't grant custody because they want money.
Exactly.
I mean, it works both ways, people. Like, use your brains.
Truly, it makes me laugh so hard when people say that out loud without seeing the forest for the trees.
Right. And don't mind me while we're chatting. I'm actually sharing the live stream right now on everything, since I don't have access to share it on everything.
Absolutely.
So, but what I want you to do is sort of tell us who you are. I found you on TikTok, and that probably has to do with a lot of my content. And your phone listens to you anyway, so it probably heard me bitching about shared parenting, and you came up or something like that. And so I followed you on TikTok, then I followed you on Instagram, and I started watching your videos, and I liked your content. I like the short clips that you're putting out. They're informative. A lot of the stuff that we discuss on the show, you talk about. You're fun, you're entertaining. That's important. You have a personality, so good for you on that one.
I try.
But I want to know why. Before we get to what you do, let's sort of talk. Let's bring it back to who you are, and then maybe that'll explain to us why it is you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, it is funny because you it has to be for some selfish reason, right? Which I will admit, like, of course, because no one, like, a little girl is like writing in their notebook at school, like with little hearts around it, like, I can't wait to advocate for fathers' rights when I grow up.
Well, there has to be some sort of, you have to have a connection to it in some way.
Of course. And so for me, it was, happening to fall in love with a dad, right?
Yeah.
I met the man who would now become my husband, and he really pursued me. We met, he really liked me, and he was like really insistent on us dating, and he had a great wingman. We met through a friend, and my mutual friend, she was like, I was like, oh, I don't know, he's a dad, and she was like, yeah, but his kid's really cute, right? And I was like, ooh, you're good at that.
And I do remember you making a video saying that dads are hot. I don't know what that's about, but
I used to always like a joke about it before I met my husband, and like it became like this, almost like a meme in my friend group. People would be like, "Oh, Lauren's such a DILF hunter."
Yeah.
But like I hadn't really meant it, and then what happens? I marry a dad, of course.
And so did you have kids before you got with your now husband?
No, I never was the kind of person who like even thought that I would get married, honestly. When I met my husband, I was actually like on the road touring, doing comedy and improv.
Really?
I was doing stand up, and
that
I was
explains
doing
a lot.
Improv shows. It explains how I can keep it under 3 minutes, let me tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, all men can keep it under 3 minutes too.
Not all men. Not all men.
Awkward water drinking.
So, I meet this guy, and like I said, I never thought that I would become a parent or anything like that. But I will say, like, when I got to know the two of them, we kept it so casual. I mean, it was forever before I met this kid, as it should be, right? Take your time, make sure that you're introducing the right people to your child. And it took forever. And then, I was liking him, but I was like, we're still taking it casual. I kept telling him over and over again too. I'm like, if you want to make things work with the mother of this child, like, I'm in my young 20s, don't worry about me. You make that work if you can. And he was like,
yeah.
So I meet his stepson. I start falling in love with them. And, at this point in time, everything seemed like really hunky-dory, right? Because one of the reasons that I fell so hard for him was how much he gave up to be a dad. Because in his situation, he was never married. They were in their early 20s. It was kind of like, we're in college, and he's a kid now. And he lived on the other side of the state, 250 miles away. And he left his job, his family, his friends, moved to be as close as possible as soon as he found out he was going to be a dad.
Yeah.
And I really admired that. And at that time, he was seeing his son every single day. It seemed great. Yeah. And then as soon as he told her that he was seriously dating somebody,
oh God, floodgates of insanity.
The end. That was the end of that. It was, you're going to be an every other weekend dad now. I'm not going to tell you about any sports, anything that he's signed up for. I'm not going to keep you informed of anything. He's going to get an ADHD diagnosis, the ADHD that he got from you. And even though you're going to ask about it multiple times a year, we're going to hide that from you for over a year. You're going to find out about it at a parent-teacher conference.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like,
and then the fun thing is, and you know what, judges are so ignorant or something. They need new training. But these mothers, and Lauren, I'm sure on my show we always have to be like, oh yes, men do it too, folks. Yes, men do this stuff too. Just it's typically, this is what the majority of men are dealing with as far as a personality in custody battles, which is you keep your ex from your child's functions, sports, doctors, teachers, and then when you go to court, you get blamed for not knowing anything.
Exactly.
You don't know the teacher's name, or you haven't been to it. Well, you haven't been to a doctor's. You're not interested. Really? You won't tell me. Or you don't even want to take them to soccer practice. Really?
Exactly.
And, yeah. So yeah, go ahead. Tell us some more. I feel like you're telling my story.
Exactly. I feel like I can relate so much to your story, of course, like secondhand, right? Like,
yeah.
I am not the father. I am just the person madly in love with the father and his son,
Sure.
who desperately wants his father to be more involved in his life, not because the father doesn't want,
Right.
of course. And
But
so
he's being pushed out. So basically, this craziness started happening when you came into the picture, right?
exactly. Now, keep in mind, he lives half a mile away from his son. We live half a mile away.
Yeah, you could walk if you
from his
wanted to.
child.
Yeah.
He's 13 years old. He's not allowed to ride his bike to our house.
Is it a busy road or something?
I guess you could say so, but there's literally a light and a pedestrian walk right between our two houses.
So
You know,
it's safe. You
school
would let
hours,
him.
if it was after school, there would literally be like a crossing guard is what they're called. Yeah.
Other people ride their bikes on these roads.
I mean, I literally see his friends in my neighborhood
Right.
who live next to him and cross the road
Right.
by us.
So if anything, he could walk safely.
I would definitely say so.
Right.
But again, he's 13. It's not the busy road.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's,
Yeah. I
and
mean, when I was 8 years old, I mean, this is a different time though. We used to disappear all day.
oh
And
my God,
we'd
no.
be miles away sometimes. And then we'd show back up for dinner. You know,
Oh,
that's what,
I grew up in Detroit, and
yeah.
my parents used to just let me like ride all around. And I think back on that, and I can't say that I would let my kids do what my
I don't
parents
think I would. Now, I don't know if it's just the times are changing or we know more about the dangers because of social media and the internet. I'm not really sure.
I don't
Is
think
it
times are changing. I just think we
more
now
scared?
know.
Yeah, maybe. And we're just lucky that most of us didn't get
Yeah,
hurt or something bad didn't happen to us.
exactly.
So you guys live a half a mile away.
Yes.
He
And
was seeing his kid pretty much every day, you said.
yeah, and
You
so,
come into the picture,
yeah,
and then the crazy starts happening.
yeah, and I met my stepson when he was 5. Okay, so it's a very long time of seeing your dad every single day, and it changes. And so they had both avoided court until this point. I mean, he was on child support, but that was because she had applied for benefits.
Of course.
Which I don't know why you would have to apply for benefits when you live with your parents and an aunt. So you have 3
Yeah.
adults in the home, and you have like a consistent 24/7 nanny service, and all
Well,
your bills are paid for.
it's because the system has created incentives that many mothers have not turned down. I don't know too many. I mean, I've looked up the statistics before. It's I think it's like roughly, give or take a percentage, roughly 80 to 85% of custodial parents are moms, and 90% of welfare recipients are single mothers. Most single fathers don't collect child support, and most single fathers aren't on welfare. They
Yeah,
don't. They work 2 jobs. They do whatever it takes. They do not do. And maybe it's a man's pride thing. I don't know. I think I don't know. I don't want to sound sexist when I say something or give my opinion, but those are real statistics.
yeah. From what I read, I believe men receive federal aid at 50% the rate that
Okay.
women do.
Okay.
So a man is half as likely to be approved for any benefits.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so I think that these men working in these 2 jobs, I don't think it's a pride thing. I think it's a necessity thing. I think they'd
Because
all
they can't. So they're not being approved for the benefits they're applying for.
Yes, because they're working 2 jobs.
So yeah. So tell me about and we'll sort of segue back forward, but tell me about your childhood.
Yeah. So again, it's funny, if I had never been involved with my husband, I would have never talked about these issues ever, because my parents are married, stayed married my whole life. My parents believe in marriage counseling. And from my childhood, I remember them saying, like, hey, you're going to stay with your aunt for the weekend because we're going to this marriage counseling retreat.
Yeah.
And we're going to go work on our marriage. And I'm like, that's super great and super helpful.
They worked at it, right?
Yeah.
There was no plan Bs or Tinder. There was we made a commitment.
Yeah. And I feel like, even though, like I said, I was never the kind of person that was like, I'm definitely going to get married and I'm definitely going to have kids and I'm going to stay at home and have a white picket fence. Like, even though I had never planned for that, when I had found myself in the situation where I was like, oh crap, I'm in love and I'm going to be with this person forever because we're soulmates.
Yeah.
When I realistically thought of what marriage was, I remember talking to my husband and saying, like, what I have seen from my parents' marriage is if one of them hates their job, then the other one just pushes through and they make it work, and they quit because they got to keep their mental health up. Or if someone gets laid off, the other one works, and from what I grew up seeing, it's like my mom's an architect, my dad's a carpenter, meaning they're both getting laid off all the time. And like I said, we grew up in Detroit. I was one of those kids that, like, my name was on one of the little trees at Christmas time, so you could buy me Yahtzee for Christmas because I was poor. And it's like, because of that, I grew up with this very clear idea that it's not about how much money you have.
Right.
And it's not always equally perfectly 50-50. Some days it's 80-20. Some days it's 100-0. And
right.
you're completely carrying your partner.
Right.
And so I kind of went into marriage with like those very realistic expectations. By the time it was, children, I will admit my daughter was a surprise. I don't think that anybody planned to get pregnant 3 months before their wedding, but
no. I mean, statistically speaking, I don't even know what it is. I mean, you have to do a survey or whatever, but most kids are not born planned.
You know what, though? I read a great comment on one of my videos, and I actually fully agree with it. But this guy said there's no such thing as an accidental pregnancy. Unless you're like people who literally was never educated about what you were doing and
how you get pregnant.
You're in a developed country and you were just like, hey, you were try something weird.
It's not accidental. You were just rolling the dice.
Exactly.
So don't call it an accident. There was a fair chance that this could have happened.
Yeah. And so I think that that's very fair. And I appreciate that perspective.
Absolutely. So you grew up in a good home. Like you said, maybe you weren't as well off, but you had hardworking parents that also worked hard at their marriage.
I would say I was loved because I was very loved.
Are you a solo child?
I have a sibling.
Younger, older?
Older.
Brother, sister?
Both.
Twins, huh?
My sibling is gender fluid. So.
Sweet. We won't even touch that one today.
I know, it's so funny. I thought about making like a quick video because every once in a while a guy in the comments will say, hey, do you have a sister? And I'll be like, sometimes.
Yeah. I wasn't expecting that. So it's like, oh, do I want to open up that can? But I just don't.
That'll just be a fun fact. And
because I definitely know. Yeah. Because I definitely
questions about it, but
I definitely know that the subject matter that you're on the show for is something that we totally agree on. So
yeah, that's just
so okay. So growing up, sibling, parents, worked hard, did marriage counseling. You go in, you have this prefabricated sort of idea. This idea of what marriage is, that it's something you work at. Then you meet your now husband. Okay. And he has how many kids? One son, 13 now?
One. I will say the step parent thing is a lot easier when there's only one.
Yeah. So how long have you guys been married?
5 years now. It's so funny. Actually, I said in a video once, I've been married half a decade, and everyone's like, oh, half a decade.
Because it sounds cooler.
I know.
Sounds more in charge. Yeah.
I was like, okay, how about you hold a plank for half a
decade? Do anything for half a decade. I've never even held a job that long. I usually quit after a year and do something else.
That was me for a while. But.
Yeah, I just don't. If I'm too comfortable, then I'm uncomfortable. If that makes sense, I gotta go do something else.
Do something.
I probably have trauma issues too, but
cheers to that.
Yeah, right. So it sounds like so you meet this man. And you fall in love with him, you said, because he was that the main reason you saw like what a loving father he was?
Yeah, I would say that definitely.
Or top two reasons?
Yeah, because I mean, there was a lot of things like the night that we met his brother, now my brother-in-law, was actually having like a small get together, not even like a party, a very small get together. And we met, and I remember I didn't like think at the time like, oh, we really hit it off. What chemistry? I'm probably going to date this guy. But at the time we did have, I do look back, we had so much in common because he started talking to me and he was like, oh yeah, I draw comic books. And I was like,
Oh,
that's
that's
crazy.
cool.
I draw comic books.
And that never happens.
And yeah, and he was like, man, I do improv. And I was like, I do improv. And he
That is
told me
weird.
that, he did the thing where you go and stalk the person that you just met. And he said that lo and behold, he saw all of like my illustrations of like the comics that I had drawn. And at the time I was running a website where I was like regularly posting. And he literally couldn't believe it. And he was like, I need to make sure that she actually drew these because I feel like she was lying to impress me. There's
Really?
no way she drew these
He
comics.
was looking for that red flag because you were too good to be true. So something, you must have been lying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he like I do remember him like trying to like fact check. He was like,
Yeah.
so you really drew those? And I was like, yeah, I've been drawing comics since I was like a little kid.
That is wild. You rarely run into a female that does something like that,
You want to
especially
know
as a
something even
guy.
crazier?
Yeah.
So for our first Christmas together, unbeknownst to each other, we drew each other comic books about each other.
You guys are disgustingly awesome.
And I was like, that's what I knew. I was like, we're getting married.
Yeah, there's no other way about this. You gotta go get me a ring now.
You know what's really funny about that?
There's more funniness.
I proposed.
Hell yeah.
It was so funny too because I remember him asking me, he was like, can I propose to you yet? Can I do that? And I was like, no, it hasn't even been 2 years. It's too soon.
You're
And
messing
then I
with
thought
him.
about that for like a couple more weeks. I'm like, we drew each other comic books. Like, what? Too soon.
What else
What's
is
gonna happen after
there?
2 years that's going to give me any more clarity? I already know that I want to be with this guy.
Yeah.
And so I stole his thunder and
So tell me how that worked? Did you do it like a man? And did he say it like I want to say he said it like a woman? Did he say yes right away? Did he give you a hard time? Did he laugh a little?
Let's see if I cry on this podcast. So I will say this, my husband's favorite holiday is Halloween. And he happened to get cast as Ichabod Crane in Sleepy Hollow at the theater. And so he was performing on Halloween. And by this point in time, he and I had already had a couple of conversations with his son regarding like, how would you feel if like one day maybe we got married? And he was always like, no, that makes sense. And he was like, cool with it. So I had been saving up and I commissioned this ring that was made out of dinosaur bone and meteorite.
What?
They had let me like pick the slab of bone. It was a lot of money, but
oh my God.
It's like a proposal ring. You gotta like drop that money. It's an investment, right? So
dinosaur bones and then like a meteorite that probably killed them.
I know.
All in one ring.
I found that out after the fact, and I was like, I didn't mean that.
That meteor could have killed that dinosaur.
It's kind of perfect in the end.
Yeah.
Like, one of those ashes to ashes, dust to dust, like till death do us part.
Yeah. That's a serious proposal when there's a dinosaur bone and a meteorite involved.
Yeah, and I was also thoughtful. I also bought a backup ring and like was like, you don't have to wear this all the time.
This was just a joke ring.
Yeah,
unless you love it, and then it's the real ring.
But I was also like, but also don't wear this when you're like doing man shit, because
you can just, it's very special. Where do you get that? Where do you get something like that? Don't say eBay.
God. I think his name was like Johan's Jewelers. It was an Etsy shop.
Oh wow. Okay.
That's pretty cool stuff.
So all this interesting stuff.
And so it was like after the show, he came out for the meet and greet. There was all these like people ready to meet the cast. And I had asked his son, I was like, do you want to be involved in this? And he was like, absolutely. I want to be with you when it goes down. And so I meet him and I start like getting down on one knee, and his son, like my hand is in the pocket about to reach for it. And his son reaches in and grabs it and goes, Daddy, will you marry Miss Lauren?
Kids couldn't wait.
I couldn't even say anything. I was just bawling
Oh
at that
man,
point. And
that's awesome.
he was kind of like, did this bitch just steal my thunder? So he like cross proposed right away. Like
Where
he was
was this
also
again?
real.
You said it was at a show?
It was during Sleepy Hollow. He was
That's right. Okay, Sleepy Hollow.
his favorite holiday.
That's very cool. So now that you're married and you guys been married 5 years, you have a stepson. You now have a 5-year-old
5-year-old daughter. Yep.
daughter and
Totally
a
so.
13-year-old stepson. So you're a mom. You got thrown into this from not knowing if you wanted to be a mom and all that stuff, and now you're married with children. And tell me what it is that we talked about your childhood and then how you got here. When did you start doing this content and creating, and why this subject matter for you?
Yeah. So I will say, as soon as we like started getting into court stuff, I, became one of those people who like dove in and learned everything that I could because in my head, I'm thinking, he needs to get his time with his son back, right? Like, we all cared so deeply about that. And I was kind of suffering in silence for all these years as we like fought this battle over and over again, had
Yeah.
to like deal with all this stuff. And I remember it was like my husband started making TikTok content that had nothing to do with this. It was like Dungeons and Dragons stuff. But he was getting like 250 views for every video. And I was like, dang, you're kind of like TikTok famous.
Yeah.
And I was like, you've got your like a niche thing that you talk about, and no one really has to like know exactly who you are. I kind of like that aspect. And I was like, this might be a kind of cool outlet for me to talk about some issues that people don't really know about, because I've been thinking about it more and more because I had some friends that I ended up kind of ranting to about it all one day. And
Yep.
the funny thing was about these friends is they're both lesbians. So they literally have no reason to care about father's rights issues. Like,
Sure.
really, this is not going to affect them. But as I was going on more and more, they were like, are you serious? Is that really how it goes? Like, this is shocking. Like, someone needs to do something about this. And I was like, man, if even like 2 lesbians are saying that this is a huge
Well,
deal.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, anytime I hear a mother or a woman, and it's not like there aren't women out there that have sons. My mom's downstairs. Um, there should be women coming out of the woodwork for their children and for their sons. And I have 2 sons, and one day, I may lose some time with them growing up, but I won't have this happen to my kids. I will not allow my grandkids. I will not be alienated from my grandchildren. I will not have, there's a good chance if nothing's done, and for the last 50, 60 years, this has been let go by fathers and men. And I mean, honestly, I'm a little disappointed in the masculinity of some men. Now, granted, it's not like we can. There's men who are getting thrown in jail, all kinds of things. We're getting silenced, but it's the organization um, of getting these men together. I hear all these men on social media, and we're chatting and all that, and they're all out there. But it's about all right, guys. Well, what are we gonna do? When are we gonna start doing man shit? When are we going to start taking our kids back from, these tyrants, this government of ours, these bullies? And that's always been the trick. It's like, how do we do this? Well, do we do it legislatively? Do we protest? Do we, it's difficult because 250 years ago, if you took a man's child, he can have you killed. We can't go around, we can't harm people anymore. What are we supposed to do? A lot of men are
Isn't
committing
that so wild?
suicide.
It's wild to me the way it's all handled, because it's crazy that parental kidnapping is considered a civil matter, right? Like,
Instead of a crime. Why is this not a crime?
You could literally. I've had men emailing me. I've got one guy who's been emailing me a couple of times, and he's dealing with a situation where his wife, who is not even the biological or adoptive mother of his child, is the stepmom, has taken his biological child and is alienating him from his child, who she has no legal custody over, and the police won't do anything.
Well,
Even
and I hate to say this, but the structure of our policing system, the police are less, most police don't prevent anything. They usually just investigate things or come upon things after they've happened. It's rare that police stop crime. I do believe that somewhat having a police presence keeps things from happening. But when you read the side of a police car and it says serve and protect, it's not serve and protect us, it's serve and protect the state.
federal
You know,
interests.
I mean, and of course, the police are not involved in any domestic matters. They're just sort of like not liaisons, but sort of the foot soldiers of the court. If they don't enforce custody orders, you still have to go to court to do it. If you have this legal custody document and you call the police and say, hey, he or she is not letting me have them, here's my court order, they do not get your kids for you. You know what I mean? It could take months once you file a motion to get heard by the court. A lot of times, not to sound biased or sexist, but this is the reality of things. Mothers who withhold usually get maybe a slap on the wrist, maybe
Right.
yelled at, but they never get their kids taken from them. Fathers get their kids taken from them very easily. All they have to be is less than perfect.
Yeah. Here in Michigan, I think it was only $400, which of course, like, no, you shouldn't fall behind in your child support. Okay, I agree, but there was a period of unemployment during COVID times where my husband had fallen behind only $400. I'm like, I'm sorry, but what American can confidently say they've never fallen behind $400 in any situation of any kind of bill? Right? The average American, I believe, owes $100,000. So let's not pretend that we don't owe money, first of all. But at only $400, his license was completely suspended. And as you know, that costs a ton of money. It takes time to bring it back. And so now this man cannot go to work. He cannot pick up groceries.
The punishments are counterproductive, aren't they?
Extremely. How am I supposed to get you your child support if I can't get to work? I'm trying to get you your money.
Nobody ever
their money that they need to survive, right?
And that really goes to tell you too. It's like, and we talk about how men, and I think you've done a video where you talked about retroactive, or when men are being put on child support and then they get a child support order placed on them and they go, oh, okay, well, we're gonna set this back 12 months ago, so already they're in arrears, right? Which is what happened with me. And I was paying child support I was handing her money, like giving her money. I had check stubs, so I made sure I wrote checks. And they said it doesn't matter. You should have been paying this much. They lied about my income. They didn't do any sort of discovery on my income, check my bank records. I was self-employed as a musician. They went in there, her side of the she goes and testifies to what I make, right?
Yeah,
so she's the authority. Yeah, she's the authority on what exactly. It shouldn't be admissible. She goes up there, testifies, Your Honor, this is what he told me he makes. And her lawyer goes, all right, well, he does this many he plays this many shows a month. On average, he averaged like a high month, like a really high month. And then they just set my child support at like I think I was at 70% of my income, and I went bankrupt in a year. And God forbid you try to get it reduced. They do not like to reduce. And so you talked about that type of how men are slapped with arrears by being put on child support. So it's very easy to be behind, and you could have been taking care of your kids the entire time. Child support.
Yeah, but then meanwhile, right, there's these horrible consequences, if you don't pay that child support. But then meanwhile, when we were experiencing situations where our parenting time was denied. When we talked to our lawyer, he was basically like, well, you're just going to end up paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars just for her to get contempt, and it's really not going to go anywhere. Right? So we have to pay if we don't pay the child support, which, okay, fair enough. But then we also have to pay if she is failing to uphold her end.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, why are
there is hardly anything about the family court system, the child support system, that makes any logical sense. It's like a Twilight Zone cesspool of this country. It's literally a leech. I wish more parents would run for office so that we can stop having lawyers create the legislation that dictates the industry that them and their friends profit off of. And of course, what Title 4 is.
Yes.
I mean,
Michigan
that
has
right.
the highest number of Title 4 cases, and we have
Michigan
the highest average child support order, which you have to imagine is shocking because you're not from, where are you from again?
Originally, so I was originally from New York, but I grew up in North Carolina, so I'm here now. That's where my kids were born.
Okay.
So I'm in North Carolina.
Because it's bad when the average child support order is the highest in Michigan and not somewhere like California.
Right.
We're not making as much money as the average Californian. How in the world does a child's cost of living here cost that much more? Double the average order in California. Like,
right.
It's kind of like you said earlier, like I really try to avoid politics when I talk about it, but clearly it's a politicized issue.
Well, and this is a totally money-driven thing. That's why it doesn't make sense logically, because it's about money. It has nothing to do with the best interest of our children. Clearly, we could see the decline in mental health, fatherlessness, and we get into all those studies and the things that fatherlessness causes, which, if you look at it, every issue that children growing up without fathers causes, whether it be mental health, incarceration, those in of itself are industries that are profiting off broken children and broken. We grow up to be, if we're broken children, we're growing up to be broken adults. We get dependent on drugs. There's higher crime rates. There's more incarceration, more therapy, more pharmaceuticals. Everyone's got ADHD now. They talk about a higher percentage of children have ADHD that grow up fatherless, because fathers tend to be the parent who allows for more delayed gratification. So moms and dads have different qualities, which we're supposed to, that sort of create a child that's well-rounded and more functional. But when you take that element out, unless mom has those dad traits, which women can have masculine traits, or especially if they had a father that maybe just had all daughters, dad's going to instill these fatherly traits, these masculine traits into their daughters, and moms can be very good at filling in the father role. But that's not the vast majority. That's once in a while.
Yeah, we will never really be able to play both roles. I know that every Father's Day we have the army of single moms who's celebrating themselves, but at the end of the day, it's just not the same. Like, I'll give you an example, right? Like, I like to think of myself as like a super mom who can do anything, but this is a good example of like where I really needed my husband's whatever dadness in that moment. But my daughter had pierced her ears. They've been healing for about a month, so they've got a little bit to go before they're fully healed up. Yeah. And I get home late one night and I see that she is missing an earring. And we try to like get another earring through. It's completely healed up. And I'm like, she is upset and I'm upset. And immediately, look, I'll admit it, I went like right to the blame game. And I started coming at him with, how could you not notice sooner? If you noticed sooner, we could have put an earring in. And he just kind of like does his like calming thing. You know how guys do that thing when we're freaking out and they're somehow just as cool as ice, just ready to put that ice on that burn there.
Yeah.
And he just goes, babe, this happens to so many kids and so many parents. It's going to be okay. And I was like, you're right. You're right. This could have easily been on my watch. You know what I mean? Like me, like, I don't know what it is. Sometimes we just go right to the blame game because we're so upset. And it's like, what was that? What was that really helping? Who cares who was with her at the park when it fell out? Could have been anyone.
Yeah. I mean, she is 5.
Forward. And
Yeah.
then, but then here I am. I'm like, I'm so racked with mom guilt. I can't get her ear pierced alone. I need you to be my rock and come with us.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, you grew up with a mom and a dad, and you know, statistically we know that kids do better with moms and dads, and unfortunately that doesn't mean that moms and dads always stay together, but
Yeah.
we know that 50-50, like we know for a fact, it's not debatable. Why are the experts who are determining custody arrangements, why are judges who aren't educated in family dynamics, psychology, or anything that has to do with families making decisions? This shouldn't be a branch of a legal, kids shouldn't be looked at as assets.
Yeah. I want to say two things. So I'm gonna start by saying, this is one of the reasons that I kind of design my content the way that I do. There's almost like 2 tracks of consistency of the content that I deliver, and one of the tracks is I like to stay consistent with fathers' rights issues, but then I also have the woman-splaining series, right?
Sure, yeah.
Men to women, women-splaining men to women, and part of that is because we all want to come up with what are the best solutions for getting fathers' rights more acknowledged so that they're not being left out. They're not being treated like third, just random people in their children's lives, just visitors. But,
Paycheck.
Another big thing in preventing these fathers' rights issues is how can we have happier marriages?
Right.
How can we be happier with our partners to a point that we are able to make it work for these kids? Because ideally we just keep the family together, right? Like, that's the sincerest hope. And so that's why it's kind of like, if that part cannot work, then move on and give our kids that best version.
As a woman, have you seen the sort of the destruction of the family unit and how that's been broken down, like whether it be government policies, propaganda, hashtag Me Too, believe all women, has culture and politics, government and policies created this men against women thing and sort of said that, women, you're oppressed. You need to push away from the family. You can be whatever you want to be. Do you see sort of, what's your take on it? How this has whole sort of just crumbled to where men and women are resenting each other. Women are no longer valuable in the home. Women can be, women can do whatever men can do, but men aren't allowed to be fathers to their children, but women can be CEOs like men can. When did equality become about women doing what men can do, but men aren't allowed to be parents?
Right. I think that there's a little bit of a confusion in the evolution because, right, like when these family court laws first started being constructed, it was during a time where women were staying at home and men were going to work. And so it just made sense.
Sure.
But now, over half of the families in this country are dual income. And if they're not dual income, it's because they're single and they're earning for themselves. And so, I think that there's this confusion because we have kind of enjoyed the benefits of the way society treated us back when we weren't working, but now we are working and we have this like sense of independence, but so then there's kind of like not really a need for all of the benefits that societally we were expecting.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. And so I feel like that might be kind of where the butting of heads is coming from. And I think it's also contributing to these broken systems, because what we see in most cases that go to court, because as we know, most are settled outside of court, and that's kind of like the light at the end of the tunnel and like the hope for all these people who are like, I'll never date. Well, most women aren't like this. Most men aren't like the bad guys.
Right.
Like, most people are pretty civil and can work it out. But by the time it does go to court, only 11 states recognize presumed 50-50. So all the rest of them, one of you is the parent and is receiving the child support. The other one gets every other weekend and is paying the child support. Guess what? Men typically make more money than women. Women are presumed to have more time for the child care. But what's happening is this weird thing where the women are going to work anyway, but then they're still getting the man's paycheck. And so why are we still doing it this way?
And so men are basically paying to have somebody else. They're paying for their kids to go to daycare.
Yes.
And they're not getting to see them. And they're, I just can't imagine, like, what would some of these judges, how do you think they would feel if we took their children? Like, I'm like, what if these lawyers that do this for a living, it's almost like, I think some of them don't even realize what they're doing. I think it's just like, some people are just in a world of their own, and they don't really understand the magnitude of dysfunction and discord and pain that they cause every single day when they go to work, put on their suit and tie, and play custody gods. And these parents and these children go home and they're not seeing their kids for weeks, months, years. These parents are struggling to make ends meet. They're sleeping on couches, but they're paying their child support to stay out of jail. And I mean, I have a high school education, but I feel like I have more logic than those who are running this country.
I actually call it the father trolley problem. Are you familiar with the psychological trolley problem?
No, tell me what. I've not heard that terminology.
Yeah, so there's this classical like test of morality in like the philosophy field, and it's known as the trolley problem. And it's essentially asking the question of, okay, the train is on a track and the track is heading toward a group of children that is tied to it, right? And so the train could run over all those children, or you could redirect the track to kill two men.
Oh yeah.
What's the moral answer?
Kill two men.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, men are expendable.
And so the way that the family court is viewing it is much the same way. And this is where we get the child's best interest argument, is they're saying, well, what's going to cause the least amount of conflict is if we just give one parent complete decision-making authority, then we can avoid all of those arguments.
Right. Then there's nothing. Yep.
And so that's going to be the easiest. We can wipe our hands of it. And they whenever they see these things, and I will say this, a lot of these judges, they're seeing these horrible cases, right? Like they really are seeing these abusive parents, these alcoholics, these absolute horrible people. And so by the time they're seeing a child who is by and large taken care of, no one's arguing that what the other person is a drunk, a drug abuser, or anything like that. But dad wants more time. He's like, every other weekend isn't good enough for me. The judge is like, this isn't a problem. Your child is taken care of. Why are you here?
They don't understand the underlying issues that like the kid might be struggling with. They don't understand psychological. I mean, that's why literally how a judge is unfit to make these decisions. Lawyers, these people don't go to school. This family law thing is not that old. The term family law is an absolutely ridiculous. Why is there law for family? Besides domestic violence, which should be false allegations, shouldn't exist. You're either going to charge me with a crime or you're not. But you can't allow hearsay to keep me from my kids and assumptions that I might be an issue when I haven't proven that I'm an issue, unless you want to charge me with a crime, family court is completely unconstitutional. Like, it shouldn't exist.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, this is probably a good segue to jump into the whole Johnny Depp
Yeah,
Amber Heard
sure,
situation, because
sure.
it's such a prime and obviously relevant example of the fact that women do lie. We know for a fact that Amber Heard physically abused Johnny Depp,
Yeah,
practically cut his finger off. We
right.
have the proof of that, and
I
yet
listened. I listened
there's
to the
nothing
audio
but verbal
myself.
allegations from Amber.
Right. And what are, typically, I'll speak for myself, and I've spoken to tons of men, and maybe we can ask about your husband's situation. False allegations have flown. Where's the consequence? When even when judges decide, okay, now we can do 50-50, they don't look back at those allegations that are lies and punish mom.
Correct. Correct.
There's no accountability for lying about domestic violence. There's no accountability for lying about to the court, which is illegal. It is illegal to lie to the court. Why are there no? And because
Yeah.
do you feel like judges don't want to throw women and mothers in jail?
I just don't feel like they want to do the paperwork. I mean, I'll give you a personal example. It wasn't like, I will say, thank God she has not tried the domestic violence allegations route. I will say that. But, when we were in court, she had filed this allegation. She put it on paper and filed it in a response that I'm imagining is still on the record somewhere. And her main argument for why my husband should not have increased parenting time with his child was because allegedly his counselor would testify that the environment held no structure and was unhealthy for the child. And my husband and I are looking at each other like, what? His counselor said that? Like, what? And so we as soon as we had read that, because it was mailed to our house before anything, we met up with the counselor and we were like, hey buddy,
So
just wondering what's up with this. And he was like,
probably
I
knew nothing
never
about
said
it.
that.
I have caught my ex lying about things my kids have said, things that doctors have said. I caught in court, and the judge did not hold her in contempt for perjury. Did nothing. There's
Yeah.
no, and I mean, literally, I've been hit with psychological evals and anger management classes because I'm fighting tooth and nail for my kids. If I had an anger issue, somebody would have been punched in the mouth already. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I do a podcast. I got ridiculed. I was told that I have mental health issues because I don't like the government.
Well, who doesn't have mental health issues, first of all?
Since when is not liking the government a mental health issue? You
But
couldn't
also,
be
yeah,
more.
no, you shouldn't like the government.
Nobody
People who
should
are
like
like
the government.
fangirling over the government kind of creep me out.
Yeah, like you're not American if you don't hate your government.
Like,
Sorry.
if you're one of those people who's like Daddy Biden, I'm like,
Yeah. That's we can do another show on that too. So we can do a show on transgender, not today. And we
yeah,
can do a show on
we'll stay
politics.
on track here. Yeah, I mean, in regards to these allegations, it's so funny. I still remember, my husband's ex once tried to tell me like, oh, he's an alcoholic, right? And to this day, I have never seen my husband drink more than 2 beers. To this day, and we've only been married 5 years. We've been together for longer, and I'm like,
let me ask you something that you may or may not know, and what have you found in your experience, both personally and obviously doing what we do on social media? You speak to a lot of people. A lot of people reach out to you as well, and the stories that you hear. What do you think is one of the or a few of the common denominators of the women or personality types that do this flat out pathological lying?
I think it's so incentivized by the court. to be honest. I think that family court makes women do things that they would not ordinarily do. I really do. I mean, I will say this: the very first time we ever went to court, what we did, like our approach in our naivete, was to exemplify how great of, like, I guess I shouldn't say we, this is all about him, but how great of a parent he is, how much he
Right.
can provide. Basically, look, we've got a home, we're half a mile away from them, equidistant to the school, we've been involved in all the activities, we keep a full fridge, we keep a clean house, he has his own room. Like, there's nothing that they can provide that we can't provide, and we have a great co-parenting relationship and everything is great. And we thought that if we sold ourselves as good enough parents,
You wouldn't have to talk bad about
that
her.
would
Just
be
focus on your,
good.
yeah.
But that's not what they want to hear, because at that point they're like, oh, so everything's good, so we don't need to change anything. It's like, that's what?
It can be
No,
better. It can also be better.
better. And it has been better before I came along. And so
That's another thing. Let's talk about how many instances, and if I was a judge, I would see right through this, but how many custody issues come to the court after breakups? Like, it's not like these women are divorcing and seeking custody. A lot of times it's the divorce. And then there's no history of police reports. There's no history of domestic violence, even before or after this you were with that spouse. It's always after a breakup. Ding, 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 folks. What's the common denominator?
yeah, and I mean,
It's a breakup issue. It's an emotional issue, not a legal issue and not a violence issue.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, in my case, right, they had been broken up for quite some time, but I was the first, like, serious relationship.
You stuck around, you stuck. And but again, the argument could have been, and maybe it was, we were co-parenting fine, and the issue seemed to arise when I met my fiance or my wife. But we were fine until another woman was in my life.
Exactly.
And that happens all the time. And if you're going to be a judge and you are going to do this for a living until we can change the system and get the right people doing it, which are psychologists and counselors and therapists, not judges and not lawyers, then these are like ding, ding, dings. These are red flags that you should just, it's so easy to tell when you're being manipulated. You know, judges just seem to err on the side of caution, but you can't steal someone's kids for a pre-crime for something you think they might do.
Exactly. I would say it really bothers me when I hear people saying things like, oh, well, most dads don't want their kids. Most dads don't want to be involved. And it's like, there's really no statistics that prove that. Like, yes, there is a fatherlessness issue, but there's no evidence to suggest that it's because they don't want to be there.
The fatherlessness issue was caused a lot in part by government, which broke down the family, which broke down children who became traumatized, who repeated a cycle over decades. The fatherless epidemic came along, and you can see the graphs, and I think you may have shown some of the graphs on your videos that's been on other videos. You can see, like, around 1950, like post World War II, everything was good. 1950, like 1959, 1960 is when divorce started. When no fault divorce is when this whole thing kicked off, right? And then every other policy was about incentives. Then then welfare kicked in, then child support, then no woman left behind, then everything started. Government was pretty much telling women, look, we're here to help you. You don't need men. And it became an industry. I mean, if you look at Title IV, you look at the financial incentives, which is, child support is welfare recovery money.
And
it should be illegal.
Too, is this idea of, don't worry, the government's going to take care of you. You don't need a man. But how the government's going to take care of you
is through the man. It's through where
me out
there
of
yes, all of this is a massive wealth transfer. So not only are you just making a man in poverty, but if that woman's not working hard, she may be in poverty. You're not setting up the kid for success. So my ex doesn't work at all. I'm working hard, but I'm paying a third of my income to her. So she doesn't have a pot to piss in. I don't have a pot to piss in. How is that in the best interest of my children that their parents can't accumulate neither one because one's sucking off the other? Any amount of wealth, maybe for, I mean, forget college, even a car when they turn 16. There's no savings, there's no nothing because you're working one and two jobs. You're working 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week. You're renting a room, you can't afford a home. How is this good for society? It's not.
exactly, exactly. And I feel like I've covered this a little bit, but it's like people, they take like the estimated cost of raising a child, whatever that may be, and then they just take half of that and then they say, okay, this half is going to go to the mom. But it's like, what money then does the father have to raise this child during his own time? Because he still
Exactly.
has to pay his own rent, he still has to pay his own utilities, he still has to pay his own car to get the kid around. But
The
then when it
four to
comes to
six days a
mom,
month, the 4 to 6 days a month, my kid still needs to eat.
yes,
I still want to buy him birthday presents. I still want to provide for Christmas.
we still
I
have to have
still
medicine in the
I'd
house.
like to take him to Disneyland one weekend if I can figure out how to squeeze Florida into 48 hours.
Oh, but then you become a Disney dad, right?
You can't.
That's the thing, is they give you every other weekend and then they get mad when you become the fun house. Like,
They blame you for what they cause.
what are we supposed to do during the weekend?
You're
Like,
not helping your kid with his schoolwork. You're not raising your child. You're just doing activities. You can't be a
yeah.
part of. You can't do vacations unless it's just summertime. Clearly, the fatherless. I mean, fatherlessness is a major issue. It should be pretty much one of the only issues that we're talking about now. It should have never been COVID-19. It should have never been. It should never be. Half the issues that we're talking about right now are symptoms of fatherlessness. You talk about crime, poverty, mass shootings, all these issues, gang violence, um, teen pregnancy, all the issues that we have. Even, and dare I say it, and we don't have to dive into it, you can just walk away from it if it's offensive. Gender dysphoria, removing, not saying that it's all the time. I believe there's statistics to show that fatherless homes, you're taking out the male influence.
Well, I will say that was something that I immediately noticed with one of the videos that I responded to. There is a channel on TikTok. The guy's name is like JD Milo, and
Mhm.
almost all of his content is like making fun of like deadbeat dads and deadbeat dads this, deadbeat dads that.
Yes, you shared a clip of
Yes.
his on a video of yours. Yeah.
And one of the things that I mentioned in my response, and I will say this, I'm not going to say that his sexuality was like caused by fatherlessness. Like, I would never make such a statement. But it's very clear that he is a homosexual man.
Yes,
And
I detected that
you know,
as a straight male.
yeah, but in addition to like many of his behaviors, views, things like that, one of the things I noticed is that it's just very clear that I do not believe that he has had many positive masculine role models in his life.
Sure.
And so the question becomes, is it a toxic masculinity issue or is it a lack of masculinity issue?
It's a lack of masculinity issue, and you also hit the nail on the head back to right there when I asked you what you think some of the reasons were for some of the women's behavior. What's a few of the common denominators? If you look at it, and like my ex, there weren't positive male role models. My ex grew up with an alcoholic father, abusive, in and out of jail. A lot of these girls that are
Mhm.
growing up fatherless or abused are becoming narcissistic. They're becoming borderline. They don't know how to have healthy relationships with men. They approach life from a an aspect of fear and when you get into like narcissistic supply, they fear everything. They have high anxiety, depression. My ex suffers from those things. Those things aren't being looked at. Um, Judges should be asking about one of the things that I've learned that I see a pattern of when there's conflict over custody. Why are we not diving into the family history? Because usually, if there's a high conflict parent, there is a history of high conflict in their childhood or childhood trauma. Do they have any a history of mental health issues? Have they had a history of domestic violence previously? My ex claims, and before I believed her, now I kind of don't, that previous boyfriends have abused her. But when you have to go to court because she says that you abused her,
Now you're like,
then you're like, well, maybe that guy wasn't the problem. Maybe he didn't do any of that.
yeah, it's
You
like
know?
the Sherry Panini case, the woman who claimed to be kidnapped and beaten, and they come to find out this year that she was just staying in an ex-boyfriend's house, and he helped like brand her and stuff to contribute to her little narrative. And it's like that's really terrifying to me that a
That
person,
people are that sick.
yeah, yeah, but and so of course there's like a level of believing the claim, right, to a point where you're like, all right, let's investigate this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm going to listen to you enough to agree that we should look into this and
Mm-hmm.
investigate it. But obviously, if they chose to simply agree, like, okay, this is what happened, let's keep giving Sherry Panini money from the California Victims Compensation Fund,
Right.
then that wouldn't be any good. So it's a good thing that we do investigations.
Yeah, I mean, the weirdest thing is I've seen more people who are passionate about this issue, more educated than the professionals that deal with this issue. So besides you and I going getting law degrees or psychology degrees, which I don't have the money for because I'm paying child support. Uh, we're trying to figure out how to fight this thing, both through changing legislation, and things like that. What is it? So going back to your content and your page, so when did you start doing that?
I made my first video November 28th of last year.
And so did you start it on TikTok?
Yeah. TikTok was the first platform. I remember being like so surprised by it because I made the username The Dadvocate, and then I kind of like sat on it for a few weeks without ever even creating anything.
Right.
And then one day I was like, hey, babe, you know what? I'm going to go into the office and like film a video real quick. And I just like, I didn't know any like editing tricks or anything like that, but I just kind of like rambled on and on about like so many of the basic issues within family court and like things you got to watch out for. And I titled it like, here's some male birth control for you. And
so how much of those beginning videos really came all from your own experience and your husband's experience? Most of it, right?
Yeah, I would say like all of it. Some of the stuff I covered did not apply to me. Like one of the things I covered in my earliest videos is how a lot of men end up becoming responsible for children that are not biologically theirs. So obviously that was not our
fraud. Yeah.
My stepson's definitely kind of a dead ringer for my husband. So.
Yeah, some you can't mistake whose kid that is.
Yeah, especially in the personality, that's for sure.
So tell me, besides the content, like what else does your husband create content like you do for this subject matter? Are you guys in a current battle, or is all that past for you guys?
Yeah, I'll answer that one at a time. So my husband does create content, but a very different topic than this. He covers like tabletop gaming, so very, very different.
Okay, yeah.
But I'm actually kind of glad that it's me and not him, because here's the thing, like at the end of the day, I have nothing to do with the legal case, really. Like that's one thing about being a step parent is like in the eyes of the law, I ain't shit.
No, they don't want to hear from you.
I am the one rubbing his shoulders and like icing his back before he goes into the ring. But once he's in the ring, I can't do anything.
Right.
So, I know that, and I'm glad that it's me talking about it.
Yeah.
As far as if we're in the middle of anything right now, we're all wrapped up, done with court for the moment. We recently did win a parenting time motion. Basically, we had actually never had a formal court order. Even the first time we went and we tried to fight for custody, it never ended with a memorialized schedule. And so it was still just the wild fucking west of parenting time and just kind of being at her whim and like having to constantly beg all the time for scraps of time. And so we decided like we're going to go in and the biggest thing was that she was trying to keep summer every other weekend. And it's like the summer when we live half a mile away, you want to still be every other weekend. Are you kidding me? And so we went and she battled her butt off. Like I said, she made medical fraud claims in regards to what the counselor claimed. Oh my God, here's another really funny claim of why my husband is unfit to be a parent. There was one line that made me laugh so hard. Oh, this is so good. She goes, there was an incident where my son's father allowed him to ride his bike home from school alone while he trailed behind him in his car. So was he alone or was he being trailed behind in a car?
Yeah, I'm not a language scholar, but but that's contradictive. That's a contradictive statement.
Is the only way that your child is allowed to ride their bike home from school if you're like running along next to them.
Yeah, you gotta be 6 inches from your kid to be with them.
And so, yeah, I will say that stuff was really annoying and it was bothersome that there's no opportunity to like contest that. Really, they just kind of accept it and then move on. But we were very lucky that the judge agreed, that we should have more time. We got a schedule that was final, which has been a nice relief. Now we don't have to like beg and plead for things. We just know when they are.
So with all the insanity, it sounds like she used a lot of silliness and said a lot of insanity that my ex has done. And you got a good result from it. But there was no accountability. The judge didn't hand out any sort of accountability on her end. What did he say? Stop it?
There was a really funny moment. I will say this. Like there were some losses on our end. For example, we didn't get all the time that we asked for. Like we definitely like asked for a lot more time, but we ended up getting more time than we had and an official schedule, which we didn't have before. So all wins in my opinion. But there was this really funny moment because isn't it really funny how when a dad motions for more parenting time, suddenly the mom wants to motion for more child support?
Or harassment. I've been hit with harassment before for wanting to spend more time with my kids. That's harassment.
It's yes. How dare you interrupt their bond?
I became a terrible dad after I broke up with her. It's weird how that happened.
Oh yeah.
She wanted me to marry her before I broke up with her.
Oh yeah. Yep. I know that. I found the blogs where she had written poetry.
We have 2 children. So after the first one, you maybe should have stopped. I don't know. We know where kids come from. Maybe you should have left me. She did. And then she got back with me and I guess thought that I'd be a better, less abusive person with the second child.
I
don't know.
Ridiculous. I mean, it's similar, like they didn't have 2 kids, but in her own blog, she writes about how there was a pregnancy scare prior to my stepson being born. So it's like, so you came face to face with the possibility of having a child with this man, and that passed you by and you could have walked away and you could have at that moment been like, that was scary. Wouldn't want to have a kid with him, but then you kept going.
Yeah. Why are we not? Where's the logic?
Don't come at me and tell me, oh, this was such a mistake. I didn't mean to have a child with this man. Clearly you did.
Like, why aren't judges acting like we are right now? Why aren't they saying the things that we're saying?
Because of the only reimbursement for the child support payment.
Well, sure. It's either incompetence or it's money. It's one of the two. Either they don't have a clue what they're doing, or they know exactly what they're doing and it's about money.
Right. Everyone always talks about weaponized incompetence in the home. Like, why don't we talk about weaponized incompetence in the courtroom? Like, clearly, I mean, here's the thing that shocks me is all of the times that we have ever been to court, and it's been a lot, because that parenting, like the simple motion for parenting time, just to get a simple schedule memorialized, took 7 months, I want to say, roughly, to get done. Maybe even longer. Actually, it was like pretty close to a full year. And it was just like constant back and forth. But every time we went to court, I mean, we maybe got 10 to 15 minutes of the judges or referees time.
The referee.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what they call them, actually, is occasionally they're called referees. But yeah, it's like, so when I hear these people who are like, oh yeah, testimonies and like discoveries, I'm like, it's like that meme where, it's like, oh, I get paid 10,000, I get paid 9,000. One guy's like, you guys are getting paid. I'm like, you guys are getting time to defend yourself.
Yeah, and maybe we'll do another episode and really break down I'd like to do a segment. You know what you do, because that's your thing. Do TikTok videos. I'd love to like just spoon feed. If you don't mind, I'm gonna just throw some ideas, but I want you to do the videos. Like, one video is that I'd love for you to do, and eventually I might get into TikTok, but you do them so well. So I think we'll just stay in our lanes, and I'll podcast, and you do the content that you do. But one of the videos is, listing what dads can be, right? I want you to spout off everything that a dad like me or your husband can be, but the courts won't let us raise our kids 50-50. And like, I could be an astronaut. I can be president. I can be a gynecologist. I could be a woman.
True.
I could be a woman. I could be.
Yeah, you can be a woman before you can be an active and present.
I could be a teacher.
Your odds of becoming a recognized and respected woman are better than being a recognized and respected father. How crazy is that?
I could identify as a walrus. I can do all kinds of things. But I can't have my kids 50-50. So, if I wanted to open up a daycare, but the judge doesn't feel, if a judge doesn't feel that it's in my child's best interest for me to raise them half the time, then shouldn't he basically also be saying that I shouldn't have more children? So he should castrate me and give me a vasectomy. He should also say that that he should give me restraining orders from schools, and like I should be charged as like a pedophile. So everything that a pedophile is, I should be. Right, I should be under super surveillance. I should always have somebody with me, with my kids. I mean, that's what you're saying when I can only have my kids every other weekend. Those are the precautions that you should put in place.
It's kind of like, what did you say earlier? Of you either do it or you don't, something along those lines, right? But it's kind of like with supervised visitation. It's like, really, you either trust the dad or you don't. Like, what is this even, except for obviously a ploy to get more money from the government? Because every dad I know who's had to go through the absolute bullshit of supervised visitation, because I'm sorry, like maybe it's because I don't interact with abusive dads, but I do interact with a lot of great dads. And unfortunately, a lot of great dads get put on supervised visitation.
Yeah.
As you said, to be cautious. But what this means is that these men who have never done anything wrong are now having to pay $200 every week for some lady to sit on her phone texting while you play with
your kid in front of them.
And it's sick to me. I like the very thought of having to go through something like that is like, and you just ignore that this is happening to me.
Yeah.
You're just like, it's fine that you feel bad because it's for the greater good. It goes back to the father trolley problem.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, and that's the thing. You're essentially claiming that you're preventing abuse, but you're actually causing it. You're actually abusing children and parents and violating their constitutional rights in every, like the family law, it should be outlawed. There should be no, you can't take my kids unless you charge me with a crime of unfitness. You have to prove, there should be no preponderance of evidence. Some of the states have moved past preponderance, which is like 51% of doubt. of evidence. It should all be clear and convincing. If there's no clear and
Yeah.
convincing evidence, criminals have more rights than dads who fight in family court. You know, I watched the guy on TV while I was at the gym, the guy who did the shooting in the subway. I guess they caught him.
Oh
They
my
were
God.
they
Yeah.
were nicer to him putting him in the police car after I think he killed people, right? Than they treated me just trying to have time with my kids, you
Yeah,
know?
if you're a man and you walk into family court for any reason, even if you're the custodial parent and you're going to file child support, you're treated like dirt from the moment you walk in that building.
And
There
I
is
think it
no presumption of positive intent.
I don't know if if the culture of uh, courtrooms have created between all the men, the violent men, and the ones committing crimes, have changed their viewpoint on men overall. And so you're coming in there that they just got off maybe a violent domestic violence case or a murder case or a theft or whatever it was, and then they come into your because these family court judges they don't just do family court. Usually it's on some sort of a rotation, or they all do both.
Yeah,
There's not usually judges that only do a family, maybe in some states, but these judges are trying violent murder and all this stuff. Then they come into your family dispute, and this woman saying he scares me and this and that, and what they're thinking is, well, I just dealt with it, real domestic violence. I want to prevent domestic
mhm,
violence. I want to protect, right? Without even thinking that the person saying this could be the abuser in disguise,
yeah.
the wolf in sheep's clothing. Because let's be honest, you look better than me. You look less harmful than me. And so what are you going to do?
You know
We're
what's so
just going
funny
to
about that too is the fact that like I actually train in martial arts and competitively fight.
there you go. And you can probably kick my ass. And yeah.
But I am presumed to not know how to guillotine a motherfucker.
Yeah, your husband's probably like, worried one day not to piss you off. He's probably the nicest guy in the world.
He has been nicer to me since I started.
Nicer. That's another show. That might be a couch therapy session. So I want to wrap this one up just because we could talk about this for a lot longer. We definitely want to have you back. I did put below, and that's what I was doing when I was typing.
I saw that. Thank
When I
you.
was looking away, I was like, and I was having trouble trying to type and not. I was trying to act like I was engaged with you. I was listening, but I'm like looking over here to the side.
Yeah, you
Uh,
were doing a good like magician
I
kind
should have done it earlier, but I don't get paid for this.
of.
So guys, go check out Lauren, as it says, the Dadvocate, self-proclaimed the Dadvocate. I'm glad you definitely are deserving of that title, that nickname. So TikTok is your big one. And then I'm also friends with you on Instagram. Go check her out on those. It's at @the_Dadvocate for TikTok. And then it's the same thing on Instagram. Just add the IG at the end for Instagram. And Lauren, is there anything that you want to add before we sign off?
Oh man,
Is
that's
there
it.
anything you want to tell the audience that might see this in the future after I share it a bunch of times? Besides where to find you, please go check out her content. It is amazing, and share her content, please, because Lauren is. Anytime we get a mother out there who presents the male aspect, the male side of things in such a positive way that you do, that's where people start listening. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, I will say this. I am really excited because I have started talking a lot with Tammy, who is the social media manager for the Fathers' Rights Movement.
Yeah,
And we've been discussing a lot, me coming on board and doing a lot more collaborative work with the
I think
Fathers'
that's
Rights
good.
Movement directly.
I
So,
I think that's what we all need to be start doing is start showing this community some unity, because there's a lot of great groups out there, but especially on social media, to have a unified social media presence, I think is great, and especially content creators like you, coming from your background, mine's music and entertainment, yours is comedy and entertainment, to have personalities like myself and yourself and whoever that are going to take the time and get and do you are educating yourself and to present it. It's how it's presented. It's important And like you said, I came across many people talking about this issue, and many people that do podcasts, and yours was on the top for women that I love that are talking about fathers and children. You're definitely up there. Keep doing what you're doing. So I am excited that you are getting with the fathers' rights movement. I've discussed doing some podcasts and stuff with them as well. So maybe we'll work together over at the fathers' rights movement. Maybe we'll,
Yes.
yeah, maybe we'll get maybe we'll start doing a segment with a bunch of hosts, and we'll get some more big guests on there. And if we can keep this ball rolling and get Americans for Equal Shared Parenting, and we got I know we got Eric Carroll over there with what is I'm drawing a blank right now with his show.
I'm
Have
sorry, I
you?
can't help you.
I know. Gosh, she even brought it up. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. Not so. There's another one called Act a Dad. Eric, I'm sorry if you watch this. I can't remember the show at the moment. It's not on purpose. I promise.
We can put it in the show notes.
I'll put it. Yeah, I really am not. He's gonna think I did this on purpose. No,
Yeah,
I got nothing.
that's just one of the best things though too, is like it's been really exciting getting to like really work with so many different creators. Like ever since the TikTok has kind of taken off, it's given me a platform to be able to reach out to creators that I like and just say like, hey, it's me, Lauren. Any chance you want to do anything? And I keep
Yes.
getting like more and more excited at the people who, like are reaching out, and like we are able to work together and make stuff happen. Cause like, I don't want to do this by myself.
No, this is a team sport for sure, and we got to make the changes. I wanted, you said you're 29, I'm 39. It's our generation that needs to end this. It's us who have to change it. We don't need any more decades of fatherless homes and welfare and
Yeah.
kids in poverty because they're not being fathers are being removed from the home. I understand that's a very communist agenda. And again, we'll do a political show one day, but
Yeah,
that is ultimately
into the communism.
yeah, I mean that is ultimately one of the ways that they sort of propagate their power is the dismantling of the family unit, of the centralized family, because that's why our country was so great, was we did have strong family ties when everything started, and a strong root in faith and all that, and that's being pulled apart. So I don't know, Lauren. I don't have anything else. What do you got? Anything?
Final notes.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, we're gonna sign off. We're gonna let you have your evening. Make sure you wash that cup. Don't just leave it in the sink. And we'll talk soon. I'm gonna sign off on this live broadcast. Talk to you guys later. Good night.